Welcome back to Alan Sky Astro. We are live. We are going to be talking about all of my Taurus fams out there. Okay. All the Taurus family, everybody who is a Taurus sun and rising. If you are joining in the chat, let me know where you're tuning in from. We are going to dive right into it. The pulse of the month for all of my Taurus sun and rising friends is going to be friends, groups, and future plans. You're going to be focusing heavily on this, especially all the way until approximately the last week in March. Now, the pulse of the month starts a little bit earlier for you guys, and that has to do with the new moon that is going to send the pulse out, the theme, everything you're going to be working through during that month is going to start with this new moon in Pisces, which is going to be at 1 degree. So, what does that mean for you guys? Well, the new moon is unfolding in your social house. It has to do with social groups, it has to do with friends, it has to do with networks, it has to do with future plans. It really has to do with a time where you're wanting to escape basically into this kind of subject a little bit more. There is a sense of, dreaminess that comes with this. You're wanting to renew sort of your faith in this area. And when I say you're wanting, this is something that you're going to be more inclined to do. All right. It's the conversation that you might be diving into. And what I see for many of you is that you're really going to be in a place where you're going to start to see that there are some new opportunities for you to expand your horizon when it comes to your friends, when it comes to groups, and when it comes to your future plans. And so for many of you, this will sort of start out with wanting to kind of dive into it, wanting to kind of escape into this area in a way, kind of getting a little bit more lost in this, because it's going to give you sort of a breath of fresh air. And so kind of diving into, what your friends are up to, what, you are up to, and just kind of going out there and being amongst the people that you feel the most comfortable with, or meeting new people. That is going to be more of the conversation for many of you as the month is progressing for March of 2023. Now, what else is happening at the time of the new moon? We have to talk about it because all of this is kind of the pulse for the month, okay? Mercury and Uranus are going to be in a square at the time when this new moon is unfolding. And this is a really interesting sort of mentality, or a really interesting sort of mindset, because there is a sense of being inspired by something that is brand new, by something that feels fresh, feels like it is the next level of some sort. And for many of you, this Uranus Mercury square is going to be happening between your career, and it's going to be happening between your first house. So this will have a lot to do with who you are in your career, or some kind of roles or conversations, very important conversations that help you to be hungry for more. What I see for many of you and what it looks like is that you're going to have a lot of great opportunity here to have conversations that will lead to a new outlook on career, and also just kind of change your role within your career, your public reputation, or even anything that requires for you to put yourself out there into the world. There are opportunities that will come along with this at the same time. So this is going to be a really interesting, dynamic here for you guys, because Uranus has been shaking things up in your first house of, your image quite a bit. And so, this month is going to be very interesting in a sense that the conversations are all brand new. It's nothing you've heard before. It's something totally different, and there could be a promotion and an up leveling that comes to the horizon here, comes to the conversation, onto the table. There's something that's being offered, or some new exciting adventure when it comes to your career that comes up. And so there is this ambition that is on the rise. So Mercury is also going to be trining Mars at the same time. And where's Mars? Mars has been in your second house, the house of money and value, and just creating more, abundance, more worth in the material sense, but also from the inside out. And so there is going to be this ambition that is on the rise all month long. So, look out for that. There's like a really, really good energy that you're starting out with. And of course, all the energies start to build when you come into sort of, the further weeks into March. There is going to be a little bit of this influence here by Venus. Since it is your ruler, I want to talk about that for you guys. What I see for many of you is that this is interesting because you have been going with a lot of changes. It's sort of like undeniable for many of you. This has been a lot of change, and change is a broad subject. Now, Venus and the role of Venus for the month of March is interesting in the sense that this is a new moon. It is renewing your faith after a while of you just undergoing changes in your career, in your relationships, and also in the friend circle. I do see for many of you that you have changed this aspect of your life quite a bit, and many of those aspects may have changed and are still changing. And this ties into Pluto as well. The whole chart always comes together. Everything works together. Well, with Pluto, I want to touch base on this. You have been changing the way in which you're viewing, the world and the people around you. Now, why is Venus really important this month? The way that Venus is moving through your chart, it's going to, go into your 12th house. Venus is going to come into Aries and then move through that 12th house. And I think for many of you, this is going to be a reminder not to be afraid to meet new people, because it can really, really pay off. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing that I see for many of you is there could be old relationship dynamics that come up that really remind you of situations where you ended up being the person that sacrificed quite a bit. And it was sort of a role that you, at some level, subconsciously took on. And this could come up again. The 12th house is such a past driven, almost sometimes in a subconscious way. And here you are going to be working through the last sort of cycle where you get this opportunity to see where you become to, sacrificing in relationship dynamics, where then it's hard for you to see and stick to your own faith. And because it's a faith-based new moon pulse, this is going to be really interesting and something to look out for. I think that for many of you, this is going to be a really good time to focus or to come into the inquiry and the question of, what can you really let go of on a deeper level? What have you learned with your relationships? And then what have they mirrored back to you? This is going to be really important. I think a more faith-based approach could be on the horizon. And so there could be some relationship dynamics that pop back into the picture, like that old flame if you're single. If you are not in a relationship, if it's not romantic, this can be your role within relationships that were depending on you, or where you were really showing up as someone who was a caregiver. And so this is really the final stage here with Pluto coming towards the ending, moving from your 9th house, from Pluto in Capricorn into Pluto into your 10th house. There's a lot of finishing aspects, and a lot of this is going to feel like it is final, or at some level kind of a test from the past, or just in general, it can feel like a test to your new version that you have been working on and evolving into for such a long time, because of Uranus also now moving through that first house, right? So what we're seeing here is that, you are going to kind of open up this month. The invitation is opening up this month to a larger picture of what has changed, who you are, and what these changes require of you now. And they require certain boundaries inside of relationships, right? Going back into the old ways, that is the pitfall a little bit. Okay. Might be something that you have visited before, but what does life really look like when you step into this new role that you have been working on? And at some level, maybe didn't even know that you were working on it, but this comes up. That's what I'm seeing for many of you. Okay. Now, the next thing I do want to talk about that is really important this month is Mars in Gemini. Okay. Mars in Gemini, that has been sort of a very interesting time, hasn't it? Now, Mars in Gemini, it's been here since August 20th of 2020, 7 months. Mars has also retrograded in your second house, the house of money and productivity and self-worth. And so for many of you, what is coming up is there is a very big completing and sort of an upswing and overcoming energy that is happening with money. You could have had some cutting ties with money aspects. If somebody else was involved with money or you were giving money to somebody, some kind of money changes could have occurred over the last 7 months. And that's what I'm seeing for many of you. What is happening is that may have been a very difficult time for many of you because Mars in Gemini, when it's retrograding here, we're going to have to take a look at what cuts we have to make, where we haven't seen something that has been cutting away at our worth. And that is what I see for many of you in the second house, right? Material possessions, things that you have been holding onto. And at some level, these things could have been also shared. Okay. If you've been sharing finances with someone and you have had some cuts here, or you had to put new boundaries down, or you had to reevaluate what is happening to your productivity or your self-worth, then this is going to be now a new energy that comes in. Mars in Gemini is going to remain here until the 19th of March. So it starts at, this level where you are nearing the end. And when it comes to the final stages, right, it starts at about, let's see here. It's going to go up all the way, up to the upper levels in the degrees. So you are going to have this sense of moving forward. Okay. Before Mars moves out of that second house and moves on, for many of you, this is going to be a time where you're going to overcome anything that was difficult. There might be some final challenges that you're going to deal with, which may feel at some level a little bit like a cosmic joke. Okay. Is this another thing that you're going to have to deal with? And the answer is yes. The answer is that yes, you have to kind of follow through. And that's going to be sort of the theme anyway. In order to renew your faith, you're going to have to go through the steps in order to just up level your money or come to a final stage where if there's anything that you have been working on, anything money-wise and productivity-wise and self-worth-wise, you are now going to finish this aspect. Now, it comes with challenges. What are some of the challenges? Let's talk about it. It can be arguments that you may have with people. And these arguments will show you what you don't want to compromise on. That's ultimately what I'm seeing with this particular Mars transit all the way until the 19th. Okay. It will keep you sort of grounded with your goals. If you identify where the argument is, why is this argument coming up? And then are you standing your ground? Are you usually, just kind of giving in and maybe not doing something that really benefits yourself? It could also be the other way around. So helping you see what's really important is sort of this last sort of final touch of this Mars. And of course, it comes with a very interesting square right before it exits this subject. And that is where the challenge is at. Anytime we see a square in astrology, if you're new, this is something that we have to sort of confront. We have to sort of deal with it. It comes up. And our effort is sort of required with this because we have to come into action with it. Okay. So how is this happening? The sun that is transiting through your 11th house of the house of friends, groups, and future plans, it's going to come into a square with Mars at 26 degrees. mid-month. So this is going to happen from March 15th all the way up until about the 17th or so. You'll have the influences plus minus a few more days. So let's just say that it's about 10 days or so, okay? Because the planets start applying and then they have to sort of release. And so there's a whole bunch of building that happens with that. Standing up for yourself is basically going to be really important during this time. And that might mean that you have to clear the air. And that might mean that you're coming to the conclusion of saying something that is finally having you make your point. And this is going to be really, really important. So if this is something that is coming up, my, advice here is that say what's on your mind and just kind of clear the air. And that is what the final stage of this looks like. 26 degrees is a particular, degree that deals a lot with making a clear-cut decision. And it has to do with you simply understanding where you are coming from, understanding where the other person is coming from, and knowing what you need is going to help you to identify what the decision needs to be for you. And once you understand what it is that you really need, what really works for you, once you clear the air, this is going to lead into you having a bigger understanding about money, productivity, and self worth, where you actually let tension build up. And why you let this tension build up, this is going to be really, really important to really kind of dive into, because then you can address certain things next time around if they come around a lot sooner. Okay. So that's what I'm seeing here for this month. What are some of the things that are really important to focus on during the month of March of 2023 for all of my Taurus friends out there? Well, it's about knowing yourself better, okay? It's about understanding and remembering that there is an inner knowingness that you carry within you, and it's going to come through the pulse of the month and how it starts out. And that has to do with friends groups and future plans. This will kind of pertain to all of that. And it also has to do with you really reflecting upon any kind of setbacks that you have experienced and how they're now influencing your friend circle, your group circle, and future plans. And then also, learning and accepting what has happened is going to be a big sort of learning curve for the now. What are some of the things that are happening in your life right now that give you clarity, that have you be in a place where you can really accept and empower all the changes that have occurred, and then new sort of opportunities that come up that will be worth pursuing. And lastly, making room for new things, right? This is going to be really important. I think sometimes we can be so closed off when things happen to us that, we can sort of lose this thing where we need to remain open, or we want to remain open. And this is going to be the invitation of the plans, I believe, for many of you, is to, make room for new ideas, for your own sort of creativity when it comes to friends and future plans and your social reputation. This ties also into relationship dynamics that might be new. Some will be old, obviously, but find a way to let this be a part of you and let it sort of shine during this month. That is what I'm seeing. That's sort of like the biggest sort of message for many of you. Okay. So I'm just going to check real quick if anybody is in the chat, if you have any questions. If you don't, thank you so much for being here with me today. I am kind of going through a rebrand right now. So just know that you're going to see a few more changes on the channel. This podcast was called Uprise Astrology Podcast, and it is now changing to Island Sky Astro. So you can follow me on Instagram at Island Sky Astro if you are not yet. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.